Hello class and welcome to our week 1 lecture. So this week we'll be covering a couple chapters from the textbook Concept of Database Management. The first one is Intro, just a basic introduction to database management, not much in it. And then the second one is the relational model, introduction, QBE, and then relational algebra. So starting with the first one, module 1. The chapter covers 3 different companies that you'll be dealing with, which is the first one is JC Consulting Company, and it gives you a background, which is a digital development and consulting business. What they have, a homegrown project estimator, company recent growth means it is no longer feasible to use those programs, so they need to go ahead and upgrade basically from what they have. So they need to be careful about redundancy, one of the main things that they're worried about. Difficulty accessing related data, and another problem that employees at JCC encounter with their spreadsheets. So when you have 5-10 employees, it's no big deal, you can use that. When you go higher and higher, it becomes really complicated when you have a lot more spreadsheet to deal with. So spreadsheet also have limited security, which is a problem they're always looking into. And eventually force the company to split the project estimates into multiple spreadsheets, which the more you do that, it is more difficult to make reports out of it, to keep it on track, to have security on it, and etc. So the problem facing JCC is common to many businesses and individuals: store and retrieve data in an efficient and organized way. When you have a home and pop shop, it's no big deal. You can use just basic Excel and then you'll be just fine. The more the company grows, the harder it is to maintain. And if you're not careful, if you don't use a specific type of application that allows you to manipulate data properly and securely, you can end up with false data, you can end up with errors, and you can end up data loss and etc. So JCC is interested in several areas of information, like employees, clients, estimates, and tasks. The difficult question is how to manage the list of data and the relationship between the lists. With Excel, with spreadsheet in general, it's as much as it is a wonderful application, it has a lot of various tools in it that you can utilize. It's still limited on what you can and cannot do when it comes to utilizing and combining and connecting multiple tables together. So beside being interested in client and project estimate info, they also want to know which clients have received more than one project estimate, which employee are assigned as the lead to which project, and basically it's just an organization. Think about it yourself. If you guys are at MAT for 2 years, you take all the classes that you have, 62 credits, and you take all the homework and you just put them in a single folder. You don't do subfolders, you don't name them, just all the assignments, you put them in one single folder. At the end of 2 years, go ahead and try to find a course that you took semester 1 of your first year. It becomes a nightmare. It's the same idea that you have here. Selecting a database solution. What works for us is, as a company, like JCC, they're thinking, does Access works for us? Does going into a DBMS, like a database management system, works for us? Should we go Oracle? Should we go Microsoft? There's so many things that comes to play when you have to decide. Now the problem with this is, if we go from Excel, let's say, to Access only, yeah, no big deal, it's not a big change. It is a tremendous change, right? Because most employees probably don't know Access and never used it. Are you going to be able to provide proper training for the employees to be efficient with it? So a relational database is a structure that contains data about many categories of info, as well as the connection between them, so the relationship between those categories. So JCC database, for example, will contain what? Info about the employees. You'll have also like a section that deals with clients, a section that deals with project estimates, and one that will deal with tasks. So using relational database, JCC can use the data to produce a variety of regular, periodic, or ad hoc reports, and that's what you always want to worry about. Meaning, as upper management, as your bosses want to make decisions, can you provide them proper reports, meaning with good information on the reports for them to make the best possible decision? So solutions, some terms and concepts in the database environment are critical that you need to know. What's an entity, what's an attribute, and what's a relationship. Entity, person, place, event, item, or other transaction. Attribute, characteristics or property of an entity, and also called a field, okay, or column. Relationship, association between the entities. For example, one-to-many relationship. One-to-many meaning what? Like you as a student, you have a one-to-many relationship to classes, meaning you're taking multiple courses, so it's only every single one of you is taking, let's say, 3 classes. That's one-to-many relationship. Storing data, spreadsheet that is used to store data, often called a data file. So these are just simple terminology you need to be comfortable with and know what they are. Typically stores data as one large table, also referred to as a flat file. So relational database, however, not only stores info about multiple entities in multiple tables, but also identify the relationship between them. Within each table, row of data corresponds to one record. Record is a group of fields, which is an attributes, that describe one item in the table, which is an entity. So the relationship is established by using a common field in the 2 tables. So something that allows to relate. Like for us, let's say Ahmad, how do we connect students to classes? So like each one of you is probably taking 3, 4, 5 classes. So how do we connect it? Through your student ID. Your student ID is the common relationship, the common field used in the relationship. So we use your student ID to connect you to multiple classes. So classes can have multiple columns. You are in a student column. We connect you to those classes using your student ID. Storing data, so warning signs that your entities, attributes, and relationship are not properly designed, need to enter more than one value in a field, asked to enter 2 or more pieces of data, of info, asked to enter both values in units of measures in the same field, find yourself adding new columns to handle multiple values, meaning you are expending a lot more than what you need, which creates more problems to connect all that information. We'll see in one of the chapters later down the road, normalization, going from form 1 to 2 to 3 when you try to normalize. Sometimes it's a good idea, sometimes it's not. When you take one single table, if I divide it in 2 different tables, then it's easier to manage. But if I take that and divide it in 7 tables, so if I have one single table, take that, divide it in smaller chunks, and I have 7 tables, meaning what? I have to manage those 7 tables, which becomes a real nightmare. ER diagrams, sometimes referred as ERD, visual way to represent and analyze a database, which is a fantastic way of basically trying to connect stuff together. It's easier to visualize, it's easier for you to view it as a database person, and it's also easy for management to understand it. Like for example, you see that infinity symbol, that's one-to-many relationship that you have between clients and projects. So you have one between employees and projects, and etc., etc. So just allows you to better view it. Identifying database management system, DBMS is a program through which users interact with the database within the data stored in the database. So access work well for JC Consulting. A DBMS is any application that allows you to manipulate data. Like you guys, you use Canvas to manipulate, the content within our shell. So you use your Gmail to utilize your email. You go on YouTube to watch videos. So that will be your application that you use to manipulate that information. It's the same thing with the DBMS here. Software stack, also called a solution stack or technology stack, groups several software components. So commonly used to build new application, often includes some type of coding, C#, Java, etc. Frameworks that provides tools to help write code and application. Database management system to basically manipulate and store raw data. Advantages of a properly designed relational database, many of them. It's infinite amount of benefits that you get out of it. You get better info, easier to access, easy to share, redundancy is minimized, consistency is applied, referential integrity is enforced, security is there, productivity, it's easier for me to go and grab the information. It's like, for example, for me, if I take all the assignments for the entire semester and put them in a single folder in Canvas and tell you, okay, go find assignment 1 for week 1. Yeah, it's going to take me 15, 20, 30 minutes to figure out, if I can figure it out. So that's the beauty about it. It's just easier to find the information, easier to find info, easier to be more productive. Key factors for healthy relational database: design. It's very critical. You have to know how you're designing this database. If you design it improperly, then you get in trouble. If the entities, attributes, and relationship are not correctly identified and created, it is difficult to enter, edit, find, and analyze. Security, critical. Having proper backup, using proper protocols to connect to it. Talent, a business must commit to either hiring or training individuals that can successfully manage that info, that data, that management that you're doing. Big data companies have access to more and different kinds of data than ever before. And it's a trend, big data and data science, data warehousing. You hear that a lot today in the market. The idea is companies are collecting information. Us going online, using your smartphones, anything that you connect to, companies are either collecting data to sell it or for research purposes. It doesn't really matter. Everybody's connecting data. And what do you do with that data though? I can have a zillion terabytes of data. If I don't know what I'm doing with them, they're worthless. The idea is, how do we use that collection of information and be able to provide services or products to the user to purchase? Think about it this way. You go on Amazon and research smartphones. You turn off your computers, you're gone, you come back, turn it back on, you'll start seeing some advertisement on the side showing you advertisement about smartphones. So they collected data, they start pushing that more toward you. It's the same thing with Google. When you search something, Google start popping those up. If you go on social media, it's the same thing. Preparing for a career in database administration and data analyst, DBA, manage and maintain database management system and software. The goal basically is for you to physically have all the setup done properly and then manage it from a general software point of view. Data analysts use tools, algorithms to mine a database for answers, trends, insights. So general have a college degree and command a healthy annual salary. It's actually one of the best jobs that you can find out there. Introducing the second company, which is Pit Fitness Database Case, is a chain of 3 fitness centers, offer classes to residents of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The center designed the classes for all ages. Clients enjoy the concept of paying per class, results in a lively revenue stream with this model. So the manager of Pit Fitness use a database management system, record for 4 main things: customers, instructors, classes, and class reservation. So that's the 4 things that they're utilizing. Introduction to Sports Physical Therapy Database. That's the third company that we'll be dealing with during the semester. Sports Physical Therapy provides evaluation, treatment, and rehabilitation of all types of acute and chronic injuries, both athletes and non-athletes. Highly skilled certified therapists use their background, blah, 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 it doesn't really matter. Provides one-on-one comprehensive rehabilitation and etc. Sports Physical Therapy records information about each of its therapy sessions. Field of data are stored in the session table. Session record will have a unique number, like your student ID, session date when it was completed, patient's number, length of the session, therapist number, and then the therapist code, for billing purposes and etc. That's what you'll have. And then you'll have either one-to-many relationship or many-to-one relationship. So patients have one-to-many relationships on the session, and then the session has many-to-one relationship with the therapist when it comes to that. So that's basically chapter 1, is just to introduce you to the 3 different companies that will be playing with this semester. Module 2, examining relational databases. Relational database is a collection of tables. Formally, these tables are called relations. Each entity is stored in it's in its own table. So JCC database has a table for what? Employees, client, etc., etc. So the attributes of an entity become the field of or column in the table. The table of employee, for example, has a column for the employee ID, column for the employee's first name, employee's last name, etc., etc., phone number, address, etc., etc. So at JC Consulting, there is one-to-many relationship between clients and projects. So each client may be related to many project estimates created for the client. However, how is the relationship implemented in relation to the database? So the answer is through common column in the tables for any clients. You can use these columns to determine all the projects that were created. Each column in the table should have a short but descriptive unique name. Entries in each column should be consistent with the column name, and then each row should contain info for a new item in that entity and should not be repeated. Relation in a two-dimensional table, row columns, is when a database has duplicate column names. You need a way to indicate the column to which you are referring to. So if you have similar names, how do I refer to it? So if I have multiple clients that have multiple, let's say, different accounts that they are with us, they purchase different parts or something like that from the company, how do I refer to which one they're if they paid an amount, it goes to this bill instead of the other. So if they have multiple bills, that's what you need to look into. Technically, when you combine a column name with the table name, you say that you qualify the column names. Creating simple queries and using query by example. So a query is a question structured in a way that the DBMS can recognize and process. QBE is a visual GUI approach to writing queries. So to create a new query, simple query and access, you just click on the Create tab on the ribbon. Hopefully you guys still remember that from your CMG 153 class when you took access. Pretty straightforward to do it. There's not much in it. Two queries views you will use in this module are data sheet view and data view, design view. Those are the two things you'll be playing with. Running a query and access does not create a copy of that. So you're running the query by checking if it worked or not. So you run it to see if it functions or rather if there's an error or not in it. Using simple criteria is just specifications that you have. Let's say, for example, I want to see the clients that have a bill greater or equal to $5,000. That's what you'll use. You'll use a greater or equal sign under criteria. If you want to see the ones that did not order from us the last 3 months, so you do less than or equal to 3 months in the criteria when you go under design view. Using compound criteria, you can combine more than one criteria to create compound criteria. So it's multiple specifications that you have using the and or criteria together, and then from there you'll have multiple answers a lot faster. Creating computed fields. Computed field or calculated field is a field in a record that is designed, that is the result of the calculation using data from the rest of the record. So anytime you can determine the value of the field using information from existing fields in a record, you should create a computed field. Summarizing with aggregate functions and grouping. This is really, it's going to be very, very much fun when we move on to the second half of the semester, when we start dealing with SQL, Oracle SQL, where you'll start seeing really grouping and how grouping can tremendously help you manage your database and function, how the function happens, and etc. It's just an easier way to do it. Summarizing with aggregate, same thing, without a grouping field, all records are summarized for the calculation. You can add criteria, etc. Sorting records, specifying a sort order to determine the order of the record that are selected. You want to show by highest bill that they have. So the folks that they owe you the most, or you want to do it with clients that purchased the most from you, or you want to do it with clients that did not purchase for the last 3 months, for example. So those are the things that you can do, the sorting that you can apply when you're running a report. Joining tables, in many cases you'll need to create queries to select data from more than one table. So for example, if I need to show my salespeople what they're sold with their clients, okay, I don't have to run everything from the salespeople table, meaning their address, social security, social employee ID, and etc., and give it to management. No, management doesn't need to do that. What I'll do is from their column, I'll only use their names, and from the clients table, I'll use only the sales, and I can just select two things out of the two tables and then run a report instead of selecting every single thing. They don't need to see that. The upper management or their boss or their manager doesn't need to see that. Using update query, so modifying several records in a single process, is sometimes called a batch update. Be careful about the terminology. A query that changes data in a batch process is called an action query. An update query makes a specific change to all records, satisfying the criteria in the query. Using a delete query, so when you're done with it, or when you create a query, you cannot undo it. It's not like the reverse button that you have for Word or PowerPoint and etc. What you'll need to do is just right click on the column itself, the query that you created itself, and you just click delete, and then you can go back and redo it again from scratch, which sometimes is annoying, but it's better than making mistakes when you're trying to modify it. Using a make table query, so make table query creates a new table in the current or another database with records selected in the query. So the new table is a copy of the selected data. Make table queries are only needed for specific reason, like preparing data to be used by programs outside of the database, or creating archived copies of data to capture info for a particular point in a particular point of time, or etc. Optimizing queries, query optimizer in a DBMS components that analyzes a query and attempts to determine the most efficient way to execute it. So it's just a easier way to run the algorithm and then have an output a lot faster, a lot quicker, without using a whole lot of resources. Examining relational algebra. Relational algebra is a query language that takes instances of relations as input and yields instance of relations as output. So relational algebra is related directly, rarely directly used within modern database management system today. Relational algebra provides the foundation of SQL, and that's what we'll see today. SQL is very popular either from a Microsoft or from an Oracle point of view. So examining relational algebra, common commands, you have the select, project, join, union, intersection, subtract, product, and then rename. Select is when you're trying to create from scratch, and we'll see in more details those things. Hope you'll have some easy first week with the content, and it's just a introduction to the different companies and few terminology that you need to be familiar with. I'll see you guys next week. Stay safe.